Rain rattled against the metal roof of the hospice like hollow applause, each drop a tiny accusation. The nurse placed a tray before me with careful hands. Thin broth that smelled of nothing, stale bread hard at the edges, and an apple bruised with neglect, brown spots spreading across its skin. I stared at it, my throat tight with something between hunger and disgust, and whispered, "So this is how the banquet ends." My name is Oliver Durrell. I am 39 years old, though I feel ancient at this moment. I was once a respected logistics executive, the kind of man people listened to in boardrooms, whose opinions shaped million-dollar decisions. Now I am reduced to a patient no one visits, a body in a bed waiting to disappear. Job loss hit me harder than illness ever could. The economy crashed, and I was let go without warning, without severance, without dignity. When I fell sick weeks later, my family did not catch me. They stripped me bare and walked away. As fever blurred my vision that night, I made myself a promise through chattering teeth. If I survive this, I will not seek vengeance. I will build truth sharp enough to cut without a blade. The rain continued its rhythm, and I closed my eyes, letting that promise settle deep into my bones like marrow. My brother Cale visited once. Just once. He arrived on a Tuesday afternoon wearing my cufflinks, the silver ones Dad gave me on my 30th birthday, the ones engraved with our family motto. He said he sold my car to cover medical bills, his eyes never quite meeting mine. His voice was all sugar and ash, smooth and false, the voice of a salesman closing a deal. I was too weak to argue, too sick to question, my body betraying me with every shallow breath. Days later, my sister Celine sent a message through the hospice staff. "We cleared your apartment. Don't worry, your things are safe with us." Safe, I later discovered, meant sold. My furniture, my books, my photographs, my father's watch, everything auctioned off like I was already dead and buried. Each word from them felt like a spoonful of poison, polite but fatal, sweetened with lies. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me and thought, family does not always stab you in the chest. Sometimes they rearrange your life while you are too weak to move, piece by piece, until nothing is left but emptiness and the memory of betrayal that burns like acid. The company I gave my life to, Haverlock Global, sent a fruit basket on the third day of my stay. No card, no call, no personal message from the CEO I once considered a mentor, just corporate pity wrapped in plastic cellophane with a generic ribbon. I stared at the basket for hours, apples shining under fluorescent lights like they were mocking me, perfect and untouchable. The night nurse came in to check my pulse, her footsteps soft on the linoleum floor. She was older, her hand steady and warm against my wrist, her touch the only kindness I had felt in days. She muttered under her breath, "You've got good bones, you'll outlast them all." I did not believe her then. I could barely believe I would survive the night. But something in her tone lit a small fire inside me, a spark in the darkness. For the first time in weeks, I whispered back, my voice hoarse, "Maybe." It was not hope yet, but it was a spark. And sparks, if you feed them carefully, can become something that burns brighter than betrayal. I held onto that spark like it was my last possession in the world, the only thing they had not stolen. The letter came from the bank on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a hospice volunteer who looked apologetic. All accounts closed due to inactivity and outstanding debts. It was the final burial, not of my body but of my identity, my existence in the system. They had erased me from the financial world while I lay dying, reduced me to nothing but a case number, a file to be archived. That night, I wrote my name again and again on a piece of paper the nurse gave me from her pocket. Oliver Durrell, Oliver Durrell, Oliver Durrell. Each repetition was an act of defiance, proof I still existed. My hand shook, my vision blurred with exhaustion and fever, but I kept writing until my fingers cramped and the pen slipped from my grip. By dawn, the paper was soaked with sweat and tears, the ink smudged but still readable. My quiet resurrection was beginning in ink, one letter at a time. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it under my pillow, my fingers trembling. That scrap of paper became my proof that I still existed, that I was still someone worth remembering, worth fighting for. A soft knock interrupted the silence of the afternoon. Then a familiar face appeared in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights. Mara Elian, my former legal advisor, the woman who had helped me draft contracts worth millions. Her eyes were tired but sharp, the kind of sharpness that sees through lies and cuts straight to truth like a scalpel. "You're hard to find," she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her with a soft click. "I was left to be forgotten," I replied, my voice hoarse from disuse. She slipped a folder onto my tray, careful not to disturb the untouched broth that had gone cold hours ago. "Your siblings forged your signature to access your trust fund. You're legally alive but financially erased from every system." I felt nothing at first, just a strange numbness. Then clarity washed over me, cold and clean like water from a mountain spring, shocking and pure. I whispered, my throat tight, "Then let's make them remember who they erased." Mara smiled, the kind of smile lawyers wear before they dismantle empires piece by piece. "I thought you'd say that," she said softly, opening the folder to reveal documents I recognized. The mirror beside the hospice bed, I studied the reflection of a man who used to command boardrooms with confidence. Hollow cheeks, tired eyes sunken deep into their sockets, ringed with shadows. A body that had betrayed me as much as my family had, weak and frail. But beneath it all, something older stirred, something patient and deliberate. Patience. My father used to say, patience is the sharpest tool in any man's kit. I never understood it until now, never grasped what he meant by those words. They thought they buried me. They thought I was finished, that I would die quietly in this room and never be heard from again, just another forgotten casualty. They did not know I was soil. And soil, when left alone, grows things. Things that break through concrete. Things that reclaim what was stolen. I touched the mirror, tracing the outline of my face with one finger, and made a silent vow. I would rise, not with anger but with precision, not with violence but with truth. An old number flashed on the hospice phone one afternoon, startling me from a half-sleep. I almost did not answer, my hand hovering over the receiver. Then I saw the name displayed on the small screen, Raphael Sen. Investigative journalist. Once an intern I had mentored years ago when he was struggling to find his footing in a ruthless industry. "I heard what happened," he said, his voice tight with anger and disbelief. "You don't deserve this." "No one does," I answered quietly, my throat raw from coughing. "I owe you. Let me help, please." His words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown into dark water, and I grabbed it. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me, a tectonic movement deep in my chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. And with that single call, the story began to turn, the wheel starting to spin in the other direction. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine it. The truth, sharper than any blade, cutting through their lies and exposing everything they had done to me. Mara arranged my discharge under a false report of relocation to a rehabilitation facility in another state. She was careful, precise, making sure no one would track me or know where I had gone, covering every digital trail. I walked out at sunrise, carrying nothing but a folder full of documents and an old jacket that smelled faintly of cedar and memories. The air outside was cool, smelling of iron and rain, the scent of freedom. Freedom, fragile and raw, settled over me like a thin blanket that barely kept out the cold. My legs were weak, muscles atrophied from weeks in bed, but I forced them forward one step at a time. As I left the hospice behind, watching it shrink in the distance, I said to myself, "They traded me for coins. I will buy back my silence in gold." The words tasted bitter and sweet all at once, like medicine that burns going down, but they felt true. And truth, I was learning, was the only currency that mattered now in this new life I was building from nothing. I moved to a coastal city where names did not matter, only ideas and what you could contribute to the community. I found work consulting for small cooperatives, helping them organize supply chains and distribution networks with the skills I had honed over decades. It was quiet, humble work, but it was honest and it was mine, earned through effort, not theft. People here did not care about my fall from grace. They cared about what I could build, what I could offer to make their lives better. One evening, while drafting logistics plans for a farmer collective in a small office that smelled of coffee, I realized something profound. I could feed people while starving greed. I could use the same skills that once served corporations to serve communities instead. The work was slow, painstaking, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something that could not be stolen, something rooted in purpose rather than profit, something that mattered. Through Raphael's network of contacts in the nonprofit world, we launched Terra Nova Co-ops, community food alliances that connected farmers directly to neighborhoods without middlemen. Every grain stored, every contract signed, carried my hidden signature and vision, the fingerprints of my experience. The same mind that once managed supply chains for corporations now fed communities, rerouted resources to those who needed them most. Mara smiled when I told her about it over coffee one morning in her small office. Poetic justice often begins with paperwork, she said, stirring her cup slowly, the spoon clinking against porcelain. I laughed for the first time in months. It felt strange, foreign, like a muscle I had forgotten how to use, rusty from disuse. But it felt good, like sunlight after endless rain. We were building something quiet and powerful, something that could not be undone by greed or betrayal. Something rooted in truth and community and mutual support. Every day, more people joined us. Every day, the network grew stronger, more resilient, more alive with possibility. News reached me through Raphael's contacts in the business world, whispers in coffee shops and private messages. Kale was struggling. The family business was crumbling under mismanagement and debt. Celine's boutique was bankrupt, closed without ceremony, the windows papered over. They blamed the economy, bad timing, bad luck, anything but themselves and their choices. But the truth was different, hidden beneath the surface. I had quietly withdrawn every patent, partnership, and license they depended on, the infrastructure they had stolen. Legally, silently. No crime committed, just paperwork filed in the right offices, just reclamation. Mara handled it all with surgical precision, each document filed like a quiet storm rolling in from distant horizons. They did not see it coming because they never saw me as a threat. They saw me as dead, as a memory they could exploit for sympathy and profit. And the dead, they thought, do not fight back, but I was not dead. I was just waiting, watching, learning their patterns, and now I was acting with deliberate purpose. A journalist wrote an article titled "The Anonymous Mind Behind Terra Nova" for a major business publication. It went viral within hours, shared thousands of times across social media platforms. In the photo, only my hands were visible, signing a new community charter on a wooden table. Kale called Mara in a panic the next morning, unaware I was on the same line, listening to every word he spoke. "Oliver, he's dead. We buried him," he said, his voice cracking with confusion and fear, the sound of a man losing control. Mara replied gently, her tone calm and professional, giving nothing away. "Sometimes death is just rebranding, Mr. Durrell." The silence that followed was delicious, thick and heavy. I could hear his breath catch, hear the weight of realization settling over him like a heavy blanket made of lead. He hung up without another word, the line going dead. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, and smiled. Not with bitterness, with satisfaction. The ghost was rising and they were beginning to see it, to understand what they had done. While Terra Nova thrived and expanded into neighboring regions, opening new distribution centers, the Durrell family trading firm faltered and stumbled toward collapse. They had grown addicted to speculation, to quick wins and easy money that required no real work. Meanwhile, we bought land. Real land. Acres of it quietly, through shell companies and trusts that could not be traced back to me or my partners. Food became currency in the region during the growing shortages, and I held the vault, controlled the supply. Farmers trusted us. Communities trusted us. We were not flashy. We were not loud or boastful, but we were everywhere, woven into the fabric of daily life like threads in cloth. And every contract signed was another thread pulled from the empire they thought they had built on my bones, on my stolen legacy. They did not understand yet what was happening, but they would. Soon enough, they would see what I had built from nothing, from the ashes of my former life. I visited my childhood home in disguise one afternoon, wearing an old cap and sunglasses that hid my features. It had been sold months ago, stripped of everything familiar and rented out to strangers who knew nothing of its history or what it meant. Standing outside on the sidewalk, I thought, they sold walls. I built worlds. The caretaker was watering the garden, humming softly to himself, tending roses my mother once planted. He did not recognize me and had no idea who I was. That anonymity was my crown, my freedom from the past. I stood there for a long time, watching the house that used to hold my memories, my childhood, my father's voice. It looked smaller now, ordinary, just another building on just another street in just another town. And I realized something important, something liberating. The past does not own you unless you let it. I turned and walked away, leaving the house behind without a second glance. It was just a building, nothing more, nothing less. Just wood, brick, and glass. Raphael aired a documentary titled Feeding the Forgotten on a major network during prime time. He never said my full name, only referred to me as CD throughout the entire film, protecting my identity. But those who had abandoned me recognized my cadence, my phrasing, my way of thinking about systems and community, the patterns of my mind. For the first time, my family watched my rise through television glow, unable to look away, unable to deny what they were seeing unfold. Raphael told me later that the documentary trended for days on social media. People shared it, quoted it, debated it in forums and comment sections, discussing the ethics and the story. Some called it inspiring, a tale of redemption. Others called it revenge disguised as charity. I did not correct them, because the truth was it was both, and both were necessary for what I was building. Both were part of the same story of survival and resurrection, two sides of the same coin spinning in the air. A letter arrived at Mara's office on expensive stationery, the kind that costs more than it should, from Cale. He invited the late Oliver's former partners to a memorial fundraiser in his honor, using my name for profit. The irony made me smile, bitter and sharp. They were using my name to raise money while I was still alive, still breathing, still watching from the shadows. Mara slid the invitation across her desk toward me with 2 fingers. "Do we attend?" she asked, her eyebrow raised in question, knowing what it meant. "Yes," I said, folding the invitation carefully along its creases. "Let the ghosts eat with the living," she laughed, a sharp, knowing sound that filled her office. "This should be interesting," I nodded slowly. Interesting was one word for it. Reckoning was another, more accurate, and I was ready. I had waited long enough, built enough, prepared enough. It was time to show them what a ghost could do when it decided to walk among the living again. I entered the hall quietly, blending into the crowd of donors and supporters dressed in expensive clothes. I watched them toast my memory, watched them perform grief like actors on a stage rehearsing lines. Selling war pearls I once gifted her for her birthday years ago, the ones she said she would never take off. Cale boasted about investments built from family legacy and my vision, taking credit for everything. Raphael filmed discreetly from the back, capturing every false smile, every hollow word, every lie told with conviction. When Mara stood to speak, stepping to the podium with confidence, her opening line froze the room into silence. "Some legacies eat themselves alive," she said, her voice steady and clear, projecting to the back row. "But some return to feed the world again." The applause was confused, uncertain, people not sure what they had just heard, but the message was clear to those who understood. And those who knew, those who understood the truth, felt the shift in the room like a change in air pressure. The ghost was in the room, watching, listening, waiting for the right moment. My name was not spoken directly that night, never announced from the stage. My face stayed hidden in the crowd, just another mourner. But my story, the story of betrayal, survival, and rebirth, spread that night like wildfire through social media platforms and messaging apps. Online, comments flooded in by the thousands within hours. "Who abandons their own? This is heartbreaking. This is justice. This is what happens when greed destroys a family." Within a week, the family's social reputation imploded like a controlled demolition. Investors withdrew their support publicly. Partners distanced themselves in statements to the press. Silence was my loudest revenge, more effective than any accusation. I did not need to shout. I did not need to accuse or point fingers. The truth, once released into the world, did the work for me. And the world, once it knew the truth, did not forgive easily. They were learning that now, slowly, painfully. And there was nothing they could do to stop it, no way to put the truth back in the bottle. Through Mara, I reclaimed every stolen asset with methodical precision, each one documented and traced, legally, surgically. Not through anger but through precision and patience, the tools my father taught me. Each document she filed was a quiet storm, dismantling what they had built on my name, on my stolen foundation. Revenge is not chaos, I told her one evening over dinner in a quiet restaurant. It is an order to return home. She nodded, her eyes bright with understanding and respect. You've turned survival into strategy, she said, cutting her food carefully. That's rare, I shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. I had good teachers. Pain teaches precision better than any textbook. She did not argue with that truth. We sat in silence, watching the city lights flicker below her office window like fallen stars. The work was almost done. And I was almost whole again, almost free from the weight of what they had done to me, the burden they had placed on my shoulders when I was too weak to carry it. Months later, a food crisis hit the region hard and fast. Drought, supply chain failures, panic buying that left shelves empty and people frightened. Terra Nova became the lifeline for thousands of families, the only reliable source. Our warehouses were full, carefully managed and distributed. The Durrell family was empty, their resources exhausted, their reserves depleted. Raphael looked at me one evening as we stood in a warehouse watching volunteers load trucks and said, "They'll come." I only nodded, knowing he was right. Let them. He hesitated, studying my face in the dim light. What will you do? I did not answer right away. I stared out at the fields beyond the warehouse, golden and full under the setting sun, waving in the breeze. I'll do what I've always done, I said finally. My voice quiet. I'll feed people, he smiled, understanding the weight of those words. But there was something else in his eyes, respect, maybe even awe. He knew what was coming. And so did I. The circle was closing. One dawn, 3 figures appeared at our distribution center as I knew they would. Thin, tired, unrecognizable shadows of who they once were, hollow-eyed and desperate. They asked the receptionist if I was there, if Oliver Durrell was available to speak with them. She replied, her voice calm and professional as I had instructed, "Mr. Durrell doesn't take personal visitors." Through the tinted glass of my office I watched them, Cale, Selene, my mother leaning on Selene's arm for support. The family that left me at death's door now standing at mine, hands empty, eyes hollow with desperation and shame. I felt nothing at first, just a strange emptiness. Then something quiet settled over me like morning fog. Not anger, not joy, just clarity, pure and simple. I picked up the phone and told the receptionist, my voice steady, "Send them in." She hesitated, surprised. "Are you sure, sir?" "Yes," I said, watching them through the glass. "Let them see what they created." I allowed them into the small conference room, the one with the simple table and chairs. The silence was thick, heavy, suffocating, like wet wool pressed against your face. Cale spoke first, his voice shaking with something between shame and desperation, unable to meet my eyes. "We didn't know you'd survive. They told us you were dying." I smiled faintly, without warmth. That was the point, wasn't it? Easier to divide everything if I was gone. Selene cried, her shoulders trembling, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. My mother whispered, her voice barely audible, hands shaking in her lap. "We were afraid. We didn't know what to do." I leaned forward, my hands folded on the table, fingers interlaced. Fear doesn't excuse famine. Fear doesn't excuse theft. They begged for supplies, for help, for mercy they did not deserve and had never shown me. I granted it. Not as family, but as clients, customers like any others. They signed the same contracts they once forged against me, their signatures shaky. Every signature was a reminder. Every clause was a mirror. And when they left, they carried more than food in their bags. They carried the weight of what they had done, and they would carry it forever. Mara asked me later, after they had gone and the office was quiet, "Why help them?" I said, staring out the window at the darkening sky. "Mercy is the most expensive form of revenge." She tilted her head, studying me carefully with those sharp lawyer eyes. "Explain." I thought for a moment, choosing my words carefully as I always did now. "Each grain they receive comes with the weight of what they did. Their hunger is fed, but their pride is starved. They have to live knowing I saved them after they left me to die. She nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her expression. That's cold. No, I said, turning to face her. It's balanced, it's justice, it's the natural order restored. She did not argue with that assessment. We both knew the truth. Forgiveness, when earned through suffering, is not grace. It is controlled, and control in the right hands is the quietest form of power. They would eat, but they would never forget who fed them, or why they needed me in their darkest hour. Raphael's final documentary aired months later on primetime television, reaching millions. It was titled The Man Who Fed His Betrayers. The world wept openly. Reporters praised the forgiveness and called it inspirational, a model of humanity. Others saw the irony and called it poetic justice, revenge dressed as charity. I did not correct them either way. I let them believe what they needed to believe, what made sense to them. Forgiveness is not always grace. Sometimes it is the last act of control, the final word in a conversation that started with betrayal and ended with survival. The documentary won awards at film festivals. Raphael dedicated it to those who rise after being buried in his acceptance speech. I watched it alone in my small apartment, the rain tapping softly against the window like fingertips. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel it wash over me. Not pride, not satisfied, just peace. Deep, quiet, earned peace that comes from surviving and building something new. Months later, I sat by a window overlooking green fields of harvest that stretched to the horizon. The world had turned quietly in my favor, one small choice at a time. Mara and Raphael joined me for tea one afternoon, the afternoon sun warm on our faces, golden and gentle. Raphael asked, setting down his cup, "Would you ever let them back in?" I smiled, slow and deliberate, considering the question honestly. "No, but I'll let them eat." The rain began again outside, soft and steady, drumming on the roof like a gentle heartbeat, like the rhythm of life itself. And as I watched it dance on the glass, creating patterns that shifted and changed, I whispered my final line, the one I had waited years to earn the right to say. They buried me with empty hands, but I rose holding the bread. The watch on my wrist ticked softly, marking time that was now mine again. Time had been my teacher. Patience has been my weapon. And survival had been my victory. I closed my eyes and let the moment settle over me like a warm blanket. I had won, not through violence, not through cruelty, but through truth, through patience, through building something that mattered more than revenge. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all. Have you ever been abandoned by those who were supposed to protect you? Tell me in the comments. You're not alone. And if this story moved you, subscribe for more stories of survival, strength, and silent justice. Because the truth is, we all carry scars from betrayals large and small. We all face moments when the people we trust fail us, when systems we rely on collapse beneath us, when we find ourselves alone in the dark wondering if we'll survive the night. But survival is possible. Resurrection is real. And sometimes the best revenge is building something so beautiful, so useful, so necessary that even those who try to destroy you have to depend on it. That's not cruelty. That's justice. That's transformation. That's the natural order asserting itself despite human failings. And if I could rise from a hospice bed with nothing but a promise whispered through fever and build what I built, then you can rise too. Whatever you're facing, whatever darkness surrounds you, remember, soil grows things when left alone. And you are soil. You are potential. You are the promise of harvest yet to come.